Welcome back to another episode of the TFR Podcast. We are back once again today to preview the up-and-coming 2026 Japanese Grand Prix. It's just two of us today, myself, CH, and MoSolver on the screen there, and it's one of the classics of the season, we have to say. Japan has been, Suzuka more specifically, has been on the calendar for many, many seasons. I think it's pretty much the 80s, I want to say. It's been on the calendar now since, and yes, it's gone through a few tweaks now and again, but it's still pretty much the same circuit as it was back in its first race. But once again, we rock up to Japan and we're expecting a pretty exciting race because the last few years it's not been one of the greatest races on the calendar because of how narrow it is, and I think the ground effect area didn't really suit it. However, Mo, we are thinking we could have a better race this time around because of the way the cars are now with the battery and the whole overtaking system. Could the new regs suit a track like this?
It depends. If the car behaves like it is in China with the ERS, that it's not a battery burning track, then I definitely can see that the cars will definitely have a good time trying to overtake each other instead of being the DRS train most of the time. But yeah, it's still early to predict that. But I hope that overtaking will be a bit easier than last year, since the only reason why there were many overtakes was because of the tire advantage and different strategies. But the ones on the same stretch didn't, overtake really. It was really dependent on which tire the one was.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. The last few seasons, it's been very much follow the leader. And this track has been one where if you get pole, you're pretty much sorted for the race. As long as you have a good kind of race strategy and, your pace is decent. I mean, we saw, obviously, last season, Mo, that incredible lap from Max Verstappen in qualifying in the beautiful white Red Bull. And literally on my screen in the background, you can see a thing there of the white Red Bull. And I mean, I still think that's one of the best looking cars in recent times. I mean, do you agree with that? I mean, I think that livery was so cool.
Yeah, it's definitely compares to the Istanbul livery Red Bull in the white. But yeah, the last year was a bit more smooth compared to the Istanbul one. So yeah, I definitely agree that this was Red Bull's best livery ever.
Yes, I agree with that one. And what a performance to match it. I mean, that lap last season to get pole ahead of those kind of dominant McLarens. I know it was a little bit close at certain tracks like that. It was a similar story at Imola, but that was an amazing lap from Verstappen, and that basically got him the win, wasn't it? Because I think apart from there was a moment coming out the pits, I think with Max and Lando last season, where Lando kind of drove on the grass. Let's say he wasn't necessarily driven onto the grass. Apart from that, it was it wasn't easy for Max because the pressure was on him all the way through the race, but he was able to control it, maybe because of the way the track is these days.
Yeah, and definitely. Pole is very important on Japan, since the most, the one who leads into turn has to go on to win the race. I think most of the
Yeah.
it's like even though the pole doesn't actually meant you always win, like Vettel in 2019 lost the first place to Bottas, and when he got the lead, he never gave it back. So it's basically the one on pole has the best papers to win the race. And yeah, that lap from Max was definitely one of the best ever laps I've ever saw in my life, and I was glad I could saw it myself. But compared to the dominant McLaren, if Max would have been, maybe P2, then I think Lando or PS3 would have been far in front of him. I don't think Max was quicker than McLaren. It was just that the McLarens were suffering in the dirty air.
Yeah,
I think.
I agree. And I think this track, like I was saying earlier, is a bad one for that ground effect era because there was so much dirty air in the end. And a track like this, dirty air is kind of one of the worst ones for it because we've got so many fast sweeping corners. like the first sector and kind of spoon and stuff like that, where if you're stuck behind a car in front in those previous regs, it's so hard to follow and keep with them for basically one overtaking spot, maybe two, shall I say, in the final chicane and in the first corner. So thankfully, that's going to change this year with these new cars and the way these new engines are as well. We should, like we saw in China, see a bit more different kind of overtaking spots. I mean, I'd also say maybe the hairpin as well. After Degna 2, that might become an opportunity now for drivers to make more kind of overtakes into that corner, where we've seen in the past they can do it, but it's a bit of a tricky one there. So yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to it. I mean, it's another early start for us in the UK. I'd imagine for you Dutchies over there, it's an early start as well. But it's, say that again, sorry.
7 a.m. in the morning.
There you go. So fairly early as well. Maybe not as bad, but but it's the last one. We go to Miami next with the two kind of races in Bahrain and Saudi cancelled. So it's the last early start for us. I mean, we'll be saying this. If there's any Australian listeners, they'll be kind of saying what a joke that is. What are you going to say, Go?
I think Las Vegas is actually still.
Oh yes, yeah. We can't forget that one. Basically Saturday night, I think that is in America. So it's super early hours in the morning for us in the UK. But I've got a stat here actually, and would you believe it, Mo, that we haven't actually had a non-Mercedes or Red Bull winner of this particular Grand Prix, the Japanese GP, since 2011. Despite McLaren's dominance in the last few seasons, Verstappen has won this race for 4 straight years in a row. And then before him, it was Mercedes for 6 years. And then it was Sebastian Vettel in the last kind of years of that V8 era. I mean, does that surprise you that it's Jenson Button since the last non-Mercedes Red Bull winner? Or does that kind of show really their dominance in the hybrid era so far, and how a track like this kind of usually rewards the best car on the grid?
Yeah, definitely. Like it's a track with all kinds of short corners, and I think the car with the better papers is has the upper hand on these tracks. Like you have the first sector with lots of corners, slow speed, high speed, and medium speed corners. And you have sector 2 that has a lot of slow corners and also traction and a bit of top speed. And sector 3 is about the top speed. And if the car has all of that, then it's unbeatable. Like the Merc in 2014 was easily like maybe 2 seconds per lap quicker than the second fastest car. So it was pointless for the rest trying to think they will get. So, if you have the best car on this track, then you definitely have the best papers to win the race, because this track is literally built for the best car.
Yeah, and I think it shows as well, though, the driver and car combination, because when I say that stat there, I mean, bar the anomalies of Bottas winning in 2019 and then Rosberg in 2016, every other season is won by a multiple champion, either Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, or Max Verstappen. And I think there's no coincidence there that this race usually gets won by like a top level driver, because there is no hiding spot. It is a track that demands the very best from the drivers, and if you're not on it, then you'll easily lose plenty of time, because this circuit does demand everything from a driver because of the variation of corners and the high speed nature of it as well. I mean, that first sector, particularly not necessarily with the ground effect cars, but I always remember like the cars before that. I mean, seeing them just swoop through that first sector, it's quite an amazing sight, isn't it, Mo?
Yeah, it definitely was. Like, also the acceleration of those cars in that car was really impressive to watch at the time, and the way the drivers really pushed the limit of the car. But with the ground effect, it wasn't actually that bad, because the ground effect era was a car that was really fast in the high speed corners. So you definitely saw in the Decna corners that they carried more speed compared to the other V6 cars. But yeah, I definitely think the ground effect areas aren't really suited for those tracks. It's really made for the cars before that.
Yes, and hopefully it will suit these cars now because these cars aren't as easy for the drivers. They can make mistakes. They're a little bit more of a challenge to drive. So who knows? We might see a few more mistakes. I mean, China is a fairly well, it's not a simple circuit, but let's say there's plenty of runoff, and if you get it wrong, there's plenty of kind of leeway of recovering to the circuit. This is a little bit more towards the Australia thing, where if you make a mistake, then there's not much hiding place because Japan has a lot of grass and gravel and stuff like that. So if you go off Mo, as we've seen before, particularly at places like Degna 2, there's not much coming back. You're probably going to find yourself in the gravel or the barrier.
Yeah, well, definitely. Like we saw with Logan Sargent in 2024.
Yes, yeah.
He locked up and he for like 20 seconds. And the race done, And also, when you're trying to overtake someone and you hit each other, then it's also very dangerous for the cars behind them, like with Perez and Magnussen in 2023. It was, a bit of lucky that Magnussen was just out of the way. But imagine if he stood in the middle of the corner, then, try to go around that. Yeah, like there isn't much breathing room for some in some corners, and definitely a bit tricky when you make a mistake there to try and regain that time in a short amount of time, because you're definitely gonna have a hard time looking for the others and also not trying to get stuck in the gravel.
Yeah, definitely. You can. This is the thing. You'll see quite a lot, I'd imagine, this weekend, where if there's a driver trying to catch the car in front, or someone's putting pressure on the car in front, and particularly in qualifying as well, there'll be mistakes there because it only needs you to run a slight bit wide, and you are in trouble. And we have seen some pretty major shunts at this circuit as well. So again, that'll be something to keep an eye out on this weekend. But yeah, this usually is a race that's kind of towards the end of the season, but it did change a few years ago where this is now at the start of the season, which I thought was quite weird at the time, but I've kind of started to get used to it now. I mean, the race that I referenced actually with that Jensen Button won in 2011, which if anyone is a fan of the 2010s era, that is a pure nostalgia race, that one, because you've got Button, Vettel and Alonso all fighting it out for the win in that race. But that was actually the race that Vettel won the championship in 2011. And we've seen many other titles as well decided here. I'm thinking of the Senna Prost days. Michael Schumacher sealed one here as well. And there's probably loads of others that I'm forgetting. Do you kind of miss, Mo, this track being towards the end of the season and playing that kind of role in a season where it's a bit of a championship decider sometimes? Or are you kind of used to it now, being at the start of the season in the kind of Asian spring with the whole cherry blossoms and all that stuff?
It was a bit weird indeed. It was shoved towards the front, but after 24 I was kind of used to it because I also think China and Japan are a bit of the tracks that I like to be close. So I think they made a good decision by putting it further at the front. But yeah, it was. I knew that Japan was mostly like one of the last tracks, if not the last track. So yeah, it was kind of weird to see it.
Yeah, it is a bit strange. I mean, this is the thing. It's had so many iconic races that you're not going to get anymore in some ways because it's at the start of the season. But I guess it's still, an awesome track. And I think the drivers do enjoy it to drive. I mean, that'll be what I'm interested with this weekend. Will we have the, super clipping throughout the lap? I mean, I've seen some people say that, if there's super clipping through 130R, that's them done with these regs. They'll be just, sick of it already. I mean, do you think it'd be bad around a track like this, Mo? Or do you think we might actually see, because there's a lot of corners and heavy braking as well, it might not actually be too bad? Maybe the battery will get charged up just through that natural braking of the car.
Yeah, definitely. As I said, if this is a battery friendly track, then it will definitely be fun to watch. Since in Sector 1 you need the corner speed. You don't need the acceleration that much. You need the corner and the feeling of the rotation. But you definitely also need a bit of speed in those corners. So yeah, it will be fun to watch. But I definitely think the clipping won't be the biggest problem. But I can see if the car uses too much battery at the start, then you will see clipping in 130R.
Yeah, which let's hope we don't see that, because I think like it removes the amazingness of that corner if
Also, if the one doesn't have clipping,
yeah.
in a fast corner.
Yeah, I can see like that'll be getting clipped up, corners like that. It'll be something that people will see in practice and be like, oh, super clipping in that part of the track or whatever. And, this is why it's, these regs are bad. But at the end of the day, I think like as long as they're going for it in qualifying and it, maybe I can accept the odd bit of super clipping. But this is also the beginning of these regs. I think they are getting more of an understanding of it. And I actually thought it was better in China. Maybe not the super clipping element, but I thought the racing was better. And I think that's where we'll see, tracks like this where there are more turns and kind of other aspects compared to Melbourne. And I think these tracks suit these regs better than the high-speed circuits of Melbourne, Monza, etc. But only time will tell. We're going to move on, though. We've got a few special liveries, Mo, that have been revealed in the last day or so. We usually have a lot of this at kind of the US races. Thankfully, it's only free this time. I remember Kota last season, we almost had half of the podcast having to try and get through some of these. But we have a few kind of common themes here. But let's start off with the RB. I know for listeners, we're having to describe it here, as you won't be able to see it whilst you're listening. But it's a bit of a red and white kind of livery. What do you think of it? I mean, dare I say it, maybe it's slightly better than the standard one? I mean, or is that being a bit too kind?
A bit too kind. I think this, what they look like, and I think I rather have it keep it away. But for a one track, it's definitely a good looking livery for a one time race.
Yes,
but
yeah.
Not like that it's better than the original one, because original one is the livery you see all the time. So if you hate that one, then you're gonna hate it for the rest of the season.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. I mean, I don't actually know what the theme is with that RB one. I don't know if it's some samurai thing or whatever it is. But you know what? It's actually growing on me. I'm looking at it here, and there is quite a cool, I don't know, like a metallic kind of tint to the red. So it might look all right on track, actually. But only time will tell with that one. The Mercedes is a bit more wacky. I mean, could we say this is a special livery? It's just a slight thing on the front wing, I guess. I mean, what is it? Is it a wolf? I think that is on the front.
It's a bit, it makes the front wing look bigger, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. Yeah, it's not exactly a special livery, that. It's just a little thing, a little design on the front, which, I mean, fair enough. But compared to the other team, which is Haas, and this one was a bit more random. They've got a sponsorship with Godzilla for some reason, but the car is, I don't know, it's got a massive design of Godzilla, it seems, on the side of the car. And then a bit more kind of an aggressive look to the livery. What do you think of this one, Mo? I mean,
I'm watching it. Oh. What the fuck is this?
that kind of tells you all you need to know.
My God. Like, what did they try to do? Like, they just try to... I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it single bit. It ruins the car totally. That whole white thing is gone. Like, it's like ruined with some black kind of lizard.
Yes.
It's like, I don't hate Godzilla, but don't put a monster on a fucking car. Like,
Yeah, it's that's definitely one of your kind of sponsorship ones that time. Because you know what, I think that Haas livery as normal, it's one of the best ones in the grid. I actually quite like
Yeah.
it with the Toyota kind of Gazoo racing stuff. Um, but yeah, maybe don't do this one again, Haas. I'm not sure. The jury's out on this one. I'm not too convinced. But that's it. That's those three liveries. And you know what? It's quite nice to see something different. I'd love it if Red Bull suddenly rock up with the white bull again. However, you don't want to do it every year. You know, it needs to be a special livery. And I feel like half the grid has got a white livery if they do it as well.
Like in 4 years, maybe. Like also with Istanbul, like do it in
Yes.
like 4 year gap.
Yes, yes. You know, keep the special element to it. Right, that's liveries done. Before we get into our predictions, which some people may be like, when are they going to predict a race? We'll get to it. However, there's a bit of news that we need to discuss, which is to do with the team principal of Audi. I don't believe we managed to cover this in the last podcast, but there has been a change there. Jonathan Wheatley has left. He's put it down to personal reasons. There was, rumour has it, a bit of discomfort of living in Switzerland, and he wasn't particularly a massive fan of that. Obviously, having worked in the UK for many, many seasons at Red Bull, but Jonathan Wheatley is already gone. He's left on his own accord, and a lot of rumours are because he is going to Aston Martin. Now, Aston Martin are yet to confirm this. They have dug their heels in saying that Adrian Newey is still the team principal and they will not be changing anytime soon. However, there must be a reason why Jonathan has done this. And Audi, for the meantime, I think have got Matteo Binotto as a kind of fill-in team principal until they get a replacement if they choose to do so. What do you make of it, Mo? And obviously, it seems as though there's a large gardening leave for Jonathan Wheatley anyway, so it's not like he'll probably join Aston until maybe next season. So, yeah, what's your take on the whole situation? And is this a bit of a bad look for Audi?
Well, I actually didn't know this before, this evening, like you just told me. I didn't know actually. But yeah, that's kind of shocking. Like Jonathan Wayne was, I think, really looking up to this Audi project, and to him suddenly leaving by his personal reasons is kind of a surprise for me, since he definitely he did a good job with the Audi, like scoring points in their first ever race. Like it's not a bad car; it's just their bad luck last race. So I don't know why he want to leave the team. So it's a surprise, but him going to Aston Martin, I don't see that happening. I
Interesting.
think he just needs a bit of time to try to see how to make the car better, and then he will be the good again. But yeah, it's weird why he left Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, Aston, like I say, probably can't sign him for a bit anyway, or he can't work for them. So there's kind of almost no point in them, making a big kind of signature there because he's on gardening leave, so he won't be able to go anywhere. A little bit like how Adrian Newey had to wait until he could actually start working for Aston Martin. There was rumours that Aston Martin, or Lawrence Stroll, shall I say more specifically, was speaking with Christian Horner, but Adrian Newey, according to the BBC, is blocking that move. He is blocking Christian Horner becoming team principal at Aston Martin. Do you see any truth in that, Mo? And do you think that is the right decision? I mean, Adrian kind of has said that he's team principal, but it doesn't really change much of his workload. But surely Aston probably would rather if Adrian Newey was fully focused on the design of the car.
Well, if the rumors are, I don't know if it's true that he's the reason why Christian isn't joining. But if it's true, then I definitely see why he doesn't want Christian to be at Aston, because Christian is the big reason why Red Bull fell apart, and he's also the reason why he left Red Bull. So I hope Christian doesn't get a role at Aston Martin or even doesn't get a role in F1. I don't like the guy, but I think Adrian still needs a bit of time to try to understand how the cars are able to improve in the course of the season, because this is his first time Aston, and with these new regulations, so everyone needs a bit of time.
Do you think, though, can you see the thinking from Aston Martin of we need a proper team principle here? And I know you say, obviously, Christian Horner, was part of the downfall of Red Bull. I don't think anyone can maybe deny that as such, but maybe you have to obviously know the success he had at Red Bull. So maybe could there be, the thinking with Aston Martin there of, well, Christian Horner won all those championships, maybe we could make this work with him at Aston.
I mean, yeah, it could definitely work, but the problem is, if he will be team principal, I don't think Lance Stroll will be in F1 for a long time, because I think he will be kicking Stroll out at some point. Because, Stroll hasn't done anything like special in those last few years, like maybe a couple of times. But I don't think Lawrence will allow that. So I think even if Christian will get a role in Aston Martin, he won't be the team principal, because Lawrence doesn't want his son to be kicked out.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Again, these are just reports from different media outlets. It's not like F1 have said this themselves or Aston Martin have said this themselves. However, I have seen that as well, that apparently if Christian Horner was to go in, he wouldn't want Stroll driving for the team, as in Lance Stroll. So, which, I mean, on paper, that's probably a pretty smart decision. When, I think Lance Stroll isn't maybe as terrible as some people say, but he's definitely holding back that team if they had two top-level drivers there. But, I mean, how long does that go on for here? I feel like things like this is maybe holding back Aston Martin an element here, because, they don't want to change these things, but do they maybe have to change these things, like, move on Lance Stroll and stuff like that, if they want to become a top team? Because obviously that's the aim for them. They've got the Honda engines, they've got Adrian Newey there, they've got Fernando Alonso. They obviously want to become a top team, but do they need to start to just, tear things up a little bit and start fresh, or have they actually got the foundations?
I definitely think they need to get rid of Stroll, because in 2023, when he had a broken hand, he drove better than when his hand was actually recovered. So, and he didn't score any podiums that season. So yeah, he definitely held the team back a lot. Since when Alonso was in Q3 fighting for the top three, Stroll was down in P16 or something, and he definitely was the reason why Aston Martin was P4 in the lost P4 in the construction, maybe even P3. So I definitely think Stroll held Aston Martin a lot back.
Yeah, and I think you're not the only one to be saying that, because at the end of the day, do Aston... I mean, Stroll is not necessarily the reason why they're struggling right now. It's to do with the Honda engine. They have to get that sorted with the vibrations with the car, and that only time will allow them to get that, sorted. We're probably looking at Miami by the time Aston are looking, more competitive. But, yeah, with a lot of these chops and changes here and rumours going around, I think for the sake of the team, it would make sense, in my opinion, if they just got a proper team principal in there. I mean, Andreas Seidel, who used to be the McLaren team principal in the kind of early 2020s, he is still a free agent after leaving Audi, but at the very, very beginning of that project. I think even someone like him would suit Aston Martin to just do what Andreas Steller does at McLaren, where he deals with the team in that way. You've then got Adrian Newey doing what he thinks he's good at, or he is good at, shall I say. And it means you've then got a clear trajectory then. At the minute, there seems to be a lot of confusion around that team of what direction do we go in. There's a lot of rumours swirling around. And to be honest, they just need a bit of stability. I think at the minute, Aston Martin are massively underperforming, and that is, an obvious thing to say right now. And these rumours aren't helping them one bit. But that's that covered, and we will now move on, though, to our predictions. The the more unpredictable part of this podcast, where we're most likely going to get this wrong. However, I say that, at the minute, I think a podium is fairly predictable in F1 at the minute. And it's either going to be probably a Mercedes or a Ferrari. So we'll see if we can get it right this week. But I think we had a better time of things with the China predictions. However, Mo, for Japan, who knows? Things could change once again. We've had a couple of weeks since the last race. Teams could bring new parts and throw a spanner in the works. But we're going to dive straight into this then. And who are you thinking to be on pole position for the 2026 Japanese Grand Prix?
George Russell.
Okay. Give me your reasoning.
This track is more built for the faster car with those high-speed corners, and we definitely saw in the last two races that not only in the raw engine power, but also the corners, the Merc was absolutely flying in those corners compared to the Ferrari and the Red Bull. So I definitely think it will be a close battle between one of the Mercs, and Ferrari just be fighting for P4 and P3. And I think Russell will be get the better of Antonelli this race in quali.
Interesting. I do agree. I think George Russell will be on pole as well. I think Antonelli could struggle here. It'll either go one way or another. He'll either be on an absolute high after winning in China and really take the fight to Russell and put a statement down that he's fighting for this championship now and he can take it to Russell in a fair and square fight. Or I think he'll struggle going to a circuit like this where it is a real challenge. Again, China is still a difficult circuit. It's taking nothing away from that. But I do think with the fastest car, there is an extra pressure that you need to get it on pole. You need to get it on the front row. And I think with Antonelli, this could be a bit of a sticking point for him sometimes this season, where there is that expectation now of you've got to be right up there. And I don't know, I've got a funny feeling a track like this could bring in a mistake. I mean, do we think, though, Ferrari could be closer at Suzuka, Mo, or do we think it might still be a similar gap of what we've seen so far?
I think it will be closer, but only in the race. We get after. Because the race prediction I tell but more about late, but I think in quali it will still be the Mercs on top.
Interesting. I'd agree. Yeah, I think that Ferrari car is very good in the race, and it's a good racing car if there is such a thing. Where it's great at starts and it's great in battles, but on pure pace it seems to still be lacking something. So who knows? Maybe at this track, if it is still very difficult to overtake, if they get a great start and it's a long run into that first corner, this could be, maybe a decent chance for them. It'd be amazing to see. I'd love to see a Ferrari win, to be honest. And obviously we'll get onto our podium predictions in a second. But another team I think that could be doing all right here, Mo, is potentially McLaren. Now you'll think, that's a bit of an odd pick considering, Oscar Piastri's not even completed a lap yet of this season so far. But they were quite close, I thought, in China qualifying. I mean, I think in the end they were ahead of Ferrari in the sprint quali, I think. And they were about half a second off Mercedes. And they have actually recently said that about 50% of their pace loss at the minute is just the fact that they can't fully understand the way this Mercedes engine works yet. And that's maybe part of their criticism of Mercedes, is that they've not been too helpful on this one. Mercedes have obviously had loads of time to perfect this engine and the way it's set up per race weekend. And McLaren are still learning as they go a bit with this. I thought that was quite an interesting statement from, I think it was Andrea Stella that I saw that, where they're losing 50% of their performance from the lack of understanding. Do you think maybe having another race, they could actually be a little bit closer because it's another round with practice sessions and things like that for them to get on top of that?
Yeah, if that statement is true, then I definitely think if they are able to understand how the engine works, they will definitely be closer to Merc and Ferrari, maybe even get in the mix between those for the podium and maybe even the win. But I think the car is still a bit too slow compared to the Merc.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Until they can find that, I think they are targeting Miami. Miami's supposed to again be one of these races where they're going to bring a bunch of upgrades and really have more of an understanding of the car. And I think for McLaren, they just want to probably get both cars to the end of the race because they have actually had one of the worst starts to a season for a reigning champion in modern history of F1. So they really do need to just get a bit of laps on the board and just get some points as well, because they will soon start to slip away if once again the likes of Piastri does have more reliability issues. But moving on though, back to the predictions with our podium. I'll let you go first on this again, Mo. We're going to start from third to second to first with these. Who is on your podium for the 2026 Japanese Grand Prix?
Leclerc in 3.
Okay. Any particular reason?
I think Leclerc will be faster than Lewis this race. Because of, like last year, Lewis was nowhere compared to Leclerc. So I definitely think this is a better suited track for Leclerc.
Okay. And what about the rest of your podium with second and first?
And second will be Antonelli. I still think he will mess up his start and, still be a bit of behind Russell on raw pace. And then it also comes to who's my first place. That will be Russell. I think, as I said, he will still be a bit quicker at the start and maybe even the long terms.
Interesting. I think I can totally hear the points there, and I think, that is something that I would definitely be saying as well. Mercedes should be very strong here. However, I'm going for a slight different prediction here. I've got Antonelli in third, but then I've got George Russell in second, and I've actually got Charles Leclerc to win the 2026 Japanese Grand Prix. And I know, you're going to be saying, what are you on about? Ferrari have been miles off in these races, but I've got a funny feeling a late safety car, Mo, picture the scene, a good restart from Leclerc, picks off the two Mercedes with a few laps remaining, and then picks up the victory. I mean, that could happen. They are quick at the restarts.
What I forgot to say, if the Ferraris manage to get that perfect start again, and if the same scenario happens like those last year, that is really difficult to overtake on this track, because Sector 1 is about saving, and Sector 2 is also mostly trying to save. And Sector 3 is just full deployment, and you can easily, defend in the last corner. So if the Ferraris manage to get a good start and even be ahead after the pit stop, then I can see your predictions come true. But then they really need to have the perfect start, and they really need to have the pace to at least be in front of the Mercs.
Yes.
But then I think Merc will easily overtake them in before 130R.
Yes, that is the drawback, is that Mercedes does seem a bit rapid in a straight line. But you know what? The Ferrari optimism has got hold of me this week, and I've got, a sneaky feeling that something could happen. I'm waiting for it. This got to happen at some point. With the way that Ferrari's been so far this season, a closer race, I mean, it'd be great to watch. The Mercedes and Ferraris going at it at Suzuka. And I'll probably be wrong. But if I'm right, then Charles Leclerc to win the Japanese Grand Prix. You heard it here first. What about, as a last thing, Max Verstappen and Red Bull? They obviously won this race last season. We don't think that's going to happen this time around. We're pretty sure of that. But is there any chance of maybe a top 5 here, or the very, very outside hope of a podium, or is that car just not fast enough at all?
I think this will be a weekend where they will finally understand what's really the big problem with the car, if you don't count the weight, of course, of the car. But if the car is able to, get bit of the good feeling on this track, then I can see them only fighting with the McLarens. But I don't see Max being with the Ferraris and the Mercs. I think that's a bit too optimistic at the moment, even for what kind of driver he is. Because I still think Max can perform more out of the car than it's capable of, but I don't think he can, bring back like half a second compared to the Ferraris and the Mercs.
Yeah, I think this is the thing. The car is beyond that point of grabbing it back. It's different, these regs, compared to previous seasons where, the field are actually quite close, so then the driver can make a big difference. But these cars are so... the Red Bull, you're talking almost 2 seconds off at points in China per lap. You can't make that back as a driver, even of Verstappen's talents. So... We'll see. We'll see what he can do. I think he'll definitely go better at this track. I think it actually suits him quite well, this circuit, it seems. And obviously he did win his race at the Nürburgring the other day until he was disqualified after. So who knows? Maybe just getting that taste of victory could bring a bit more of optimism back. I'm going to quickly check the weather, actually, because I haven't spoke about that yet. That could... throw some spanners in the works, and that could actually help the likes of Verstappen if it is a wet race. And obviously we haven't had any rain yet in these new cars. The forecast is dry at the minute. It seems like it's dry, about 20 degrees for Suzuka, although there's a 30% chance of rain, so who knows. And we know what this track can be like for storms and monsoons and cancelled races that we've had over the years. So who knows? Stay tuned for that one. There could be a few things thrown into the mix. And thank you very much, Mo, for joining me on this week's episode of the TFR podcast. Hopefully we're going to get a good race this weekend. And will you be getting up for the race at 7? Go on, surely. Yes, exactly. That's good to hear. We're committed to the cause here of getting up early and watching it live. I'll say that and then I'll put it on record or something. But yes, let's hope it's a good race. And if you've enjoyed this episode of the TFR podcast and you are listening on your audio platform of choice, you can obviously follow the page on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel. Every sub helps at the minute as we continue to grow this podcast. We'll be back next week for our Japanese Grand Prix review before an almighty long break until the Miami Grand Prix. I have no idea what podcasts we'll do in the meantime between those races, but I'm sure we'll think of something. But we'll be back next week to recap everything from Japan, and we'll see you then.